Welcome to the NBA Daily for July 10th, 2025. Dave is sweating in Vegas, and we welcome in Lauren Williams from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution to talk the Atlanta Hawks. What's up, guys, and welcome to the show. Lauren Williams, we've missed you.
Thank you. I've missed you guys too. What a pleasure
I
to
just
be
saw
here,
Lauren
as always.
at the finals,
True.
luckily. Yeah.
True. We haven't had her on the show in a while.
That's right.
And we definitely needed to have you on, Lauren, because a lot has been going on. The Hawks have been extremely active this offseason. They've made some trades. They've made some free agent moves. And I mean, Dave, where do you put them for next year?
I'm very high on the Hawks. I think that they have a good shot at making the conference finals. I mean, a lot of it has to do with the East. East is weak. East is going to be down, especially next year. But I like the moves that they made. And I think this was already a pretty good team that dealt with some injury, some poor injury luck last season. I think they would have performed better. We'll see. And a lot of this is just, I believe Trae Young can get hot in the playoffs. I buy that guy as a playoff performer.
He's capable of being a villain in anyone's story for sure. But Lauren, let's look at some of these trades. I mean, these moves. Kristaps Porzingis, of course, gets traded to Atlanta from Boston. They acquire Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They add in a Sanul in the draft. I mean, there's a lot of movement here, a lot of options in terms of the best moves, but I want to know your expert opinion. Which one did you like the most for retooling the Hawks?
Honestly, I think my favorite one is probably, them doing the sign and trade to get Nickeil Alexander-Walker. You add a guy who I think has a similar trajectory to what, Dyson Daniels had last year. I'm going to put Nickeil Alexander-Walker in, most improved race from right now, just because of how similar their storylines, if you will, or their career trajectories have been. Both came from New Orleans. Of course, Na is a little bit older than Dyson, but the fact that they've both, hit multiple teams and then they start to have this sort of offensive explosion just because they're getting a little bit more playing time, but they have the defensive background. It's just perfect. And I think if you're a team that, started the season as one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA and you get better, you're in the middle of the pack thanks to everything, that Dyson Daniels added to the roster and how he kind of upped everybody else's defensive energy. You kind of have to double down on that, and adding Na to that, especially with how well he shoots the ball. I think they've just kind of gotten on an amazing track. Obviously, adding in Kristaps Porzingis is huge, just because when you get a 7-footer who you can have essentially as a 1-year rental and see kind of what he can add, that's great. But because he's a little bit older, he turns 30 on August 2nd. He's injury prone. It's hard for me to say that that's my favorite move, just because you never know how much you're going to be able to bank on him. But he does, ultimately add a lot to this roster just because of how he can space the floor. He leads the league, or is pretty high up in the list of all-time blocks. I think he's 9 or something like that. So, I mean, that's pretty huge. Especially if you're pairing him alongside a guy like Jalen Johnson or Onyeka Okongwu. But I'm going to double down and say Na is probably my favorite move that they've done so far.
I mean, especially after you look at what he did in the playoffs for the Timberwolves, like he's another guy that can make shots, actually, like not just spot up and shoot from three, but, he could attack a closeout. He could hit that mid range, which is a shot that I think Atlanta could really use, a guy who can step in and shoot that. What do you expect the lineup to look like? I'm really curious here because, I mean, he obviously is a high level player, but he was in that bench role in Minnesota. You look at what the Hawks have already. They've already got a lot of guys that they need to play. Like, is Na going to break into the starting lineup, or is this going to be a thing where, like, you expect Quin Snyder? Is he going to play around night to night? I mean, Porzingis, look, let's say all things go great for Porzingis. He's going to play 60 or 65 games at best. So that Okongwu is going to get a lot of rotation in there as a starter. But I'm really curious about how they're going to stretch out the minutes with all these guards and wings that they have to fill out.
So if that's the thing with Quin Snyder, it's hard to kind of gauge what his lineups are going to look like, because last season he would play anywhere from, 8 guys, especially when they were healthy. And then it slowly extended out to like 9, 10 as like injuries started to pile up. So, in this upcoming season, I think that, Na is going to be a guy that comes off the bench because he and Luke Kennard are going to be sort of that scoring punch.
I didn't mention him yet.
Yeah, Luke Kennard, they just made that deal official the other day. But I think depending on what they need, it'll be either Luke or Na as your sort of sixth man role. I do envision Porzingis sort of coming off of the bench only because you promote Onyeka Okongwu after you move on from Clint Capella. He's your starting center of the future. He pairs so well with Jalen Johnson that it's hard for me to see Quin wanting to mess with that starting lineup, knowing how well it sort of worked early on with Trae, Dyson, Zachary Risachet, Jalen, and then Onyeka Okongwu. So I think it's easier to sort of move the pieces around that sort of foundation versus trying to make something work right off the bat with Kristaps at the 5. So
could also protect him a little bit, right? Like if you're looking for minutes.
Yeah. And I know some people look at that $30 million contract and say you're paying a guy $30 million, but I also think it's for 1 year. And you know what your foundation is. So why not sort of roll with that a little bit longer and then you adjust accordingly?
It does feel like the Atlanta Hawks are taking a chance to figure out, can we capitalize on the talent that we have right now to the maximum ability? And Trae Young now has all these tools around him to be able to produce something. And, I think we talked about this right before we jumped on, like, could they get to the conference finals for sure? I think one of the factors that's kind of outlying, of course, Kristaps Porzingis, people are talking about 30 million, and they're not just talking about from the perspective of just having money on cap. They're also talking about the fact that he didn't play a ton of games, especially towards the end of that year. And health is a factor for the Atlanta Hawks, as Dave mentioned. Name that comes to mind, Jalen Johnson.
Yeah.
I mean, he was having a phenomenal season before, heading out basically off of his injury, playing about 30 games last year. Where do you see his trajectory in all of this, and how impactful can he be for the Atlanta Hawks making that jump to a team that could end up in a conference finals?
I mean, I think it's absolutely necessary for him to make that jump, even though, he's coming off of that torn labrum injury that he had. He had surgery at the end of the season, and he's been steadily working himself back. He's been posting a lot of stuff on social media showing his work, and he looks like he's kind of operating at mostly full speed, but it's obviously hard to tell because it's not open runs. It's not a lot of contact. True. It's just a lot of drills. And so it's really hard to...
I've seen Ben Simmons' social media highlights, so I know to take all highlights on social media. That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm just glad to see him running around, And,
I think it's great that, Jalen is operating at, the full effort that he is. And so I think mostly, what the front office has indicated is that Jalen will be ready to go for training camp. And so if he's ready to go for training camp, then that to me says that they're banking on him having a big start to the season, especially because part of what, made that team sort of fall apart a little bit last year is that they didn't have him as that secondary playmaking option. And so if he's the glue guy and you don't have that, well, that really does throw a wrench into a lot of different things. So I think they're going to bank on him being a guy that can be that connector. Obviously, Kristaps kind of helps with that because that's part of his strengths. He's a connecting guy. And so maybe that's what they do to start the season, is that they kind of share their minutes a little bit more, and you see a little bit, more, I guess, split in terms of them playing the 4. But then you also have a guy like, it's so tough. You have a guy like Mo Gay who had a great end to the season, and you're going to expect him to take another big leap. But to get back to Jalen Johnson, I do think it's going to be a big year for him solely because of just the versatility that he adds to the roster. You're going to expect that he, takes another step as far as being able to knock shots down from 3. But what he can do inside the paint is just so important to what this Hawks team needs to do, just because of how it opens things up for Trae Young to knock those shots down from, 30, 40 feet, whatever Trae wants to do these days.
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
That's the big thing. Well, no. That's the big thing about Jalen Johnson. I'm glad you mentioned his playmaking, because one of the things that maybe we even kind of glossed over with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, this is some of the most playmaking that Trae Young has had available on the team at the same time that he's been out there. And this guy is one of the 3 or 4 best passers and playmakers in the league. It gets overlooked because, he is on the ball so much. But, we've hit him traditionally, I have at least, for not being able to play off the ball. I think that this is the season where the excuses have to go out the window, because now you're going to have guys that are capable of doing it. And I think that that's a big thing for Quin Snyder to be able to take this team to the next level.
That's another thing, too, that I think gets overlooked with Luke Kennard's game a little bit. We saw it last season with him in Memphis, him playing with the ball in his hands a little bit more. So, yeah, Trae has so many options around him that can help him kind of like take some of that playmaking load off of his shoulders. And that should hopefully take some of the pressure off of him to start the season in terms of being able to score. Because over the last few seasons, with the Hawks asking him to do so much in terms of trying to bring guys like Dyson Daniels and Zachary Sachet along, you could kind of see his efficiency going down. And so especially with referees kind of looking at his game a little bit differently, they're not maybe giving him a lot of the calls he was used to at the beginning of his career. I think, maybe it's going to help him if he can kind of take some steps further back from the basket and knock some of those shots down. And if he has guys that can space the floor optimally for him, well, heck, that's going to make things a lot easier for him.
Well, listen, to close on that note, of the 76 games that Trae Young played last year, he had 17 with 15 or more assists. So if people weren't picking up on what he's dishing out, they should know with that stat. Let's take a break real quick, and we'll continue on the other side of this break, talking about the Hawks. All right, we've talked a little bit about some of the moves that the Atlanta Hawks have made, but now it's about what is it actually going to look like? And it really starts from the top, Lauren, particularly from the GM position, the person that's pulling all these pieces together. Of course, we know Landry Fields exits in that role. Ansi Saleh comes in and starts incorporating his team and making moves. So far from what you've seen per the team he's brought on, as well as the moves that he's made, what's the vision from the front office for the Hawks next year?
Yeah, I think the vision is that they're going to have a team that's going to go out there and compete. And I think the key thing that Ansi Saleh has stressed to us and the media availabilities that we've had with him over the past 3 or so weeks is that they're trying to build something that's going to be long term. And you look at, in terms of the moves, they trade down and on draft night, move from the 13th pick that they got in that Sacramento trade. They flipped it and got a first round pick for the 2026 draft when they had a pick swap with the Spurs after the DeJounte Murray trade. So by everything that we've seen, it's, they're trying to make moves not only for the future, but they're trying to set themselves up for success long term. And it's not that they've just said that they're doing that, but it seems like the actions are sort of lining up with the words that we're hearing. And so I think getting a first round pick that's not just a pick swap, for the long term next year in a draft class that's quite good. I think that's huge for the team. And I think, depending on obviously how they finish out this regular season, maybe into the playoffs, just because I just don't want to jinx anything. I believe my words maybe hold too much power and I jinx things. But depending on how things work out in the playoffs, maybe they're just one piece away from what they need in order to actually be a finals contender. And so maybe that's something that they address in the draft, who knows, or next free agents class. So by and large, it seems like this front office is experienced. It has, a clear cut plan that's actually something that they can, enact or act upon and move upon. And just, it seems like they're very well respected around the league. And so I think that's huge when you're able to pull off moves again by moving down from 13 to 23 and getting a first round pick, especially from the Pelicans team that who knows what's going on.
They're going to be awful. They're going to be awful. This is going to be a high lottery pick, most likely. This trade that they pulled off, that the Hawks pulled off, I mean, the story behind it is pretty insane. Unreal. Where the Hawks don't believe that this is actually being offered. I love this story so much, but the Hawks essentially
had to call them and be like,
yes,
are you sure about this?
You can't even give them credit.
For our listeners, it is worth breaking down again, because
Dave, you go ahead, you break it down.
Okay.
No, Dave. Actually, Dave, you go, because I know you like telling this story.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny that this is a trade that's, between the draft day trade where the Pelicans traded up and they give away this prize jewel asset that is going to be a high lottery pick in next year's draft, it starts off as a conversation between assistant GMs. This is how business gets done in the NBA quite often. But the asset that was offered was so ridiculous that Ansi Saleh had to call Joe Dumars just to make sure that this was real. And it is, I swear, the funniest and most awesome front office story I have ever heard. Just don't ever let anyone tell you you're not qualified to do something. By the way, that's just my life advice out there after you read about this story. But it was a home run. I mean, this is, aside from the Luka Doncic trade, it's the, if you're looking at it from the Hawks perspective, it's probably the best trade anyone's pulled off in the last 10 years.
That's a really good point. I never thought about
Mind
that.
you, this is the same front office that also swindled the previous Pelicans front office regime and got Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance Jr., you know, the pick for a second first round pick that they did not have before for this year's draft that they then flipped in the Porzingis trade and moving parts. So it's just kind of like, but the work that they've been doing is crazy.
This is what I want, back to your point about the plan and how they're planning for the future. This is what good front offices do, right? You look for good players where you can find them. You sign them. You get a Nickeil Alexander-Walker. You try to improve your team. And then you wind up lucking into some of these things that, I mean, I wouldn't say having a high lottery pick handed to you is on the margins. Those second rounders are on the margins, though. I mean, the Cavs, this Cleveland Cavaliers team was built on some good lottery luck and second round draft picks and all of these other things. I think the Hawks are kind of following that blueprint. It fits because, you know, a lot of those guys are Spurs guys over there now. So maybe that mindset of we can be good and also think about the future. Yeah. But this pick in particular, what if they're really good this year? And there's a guy out there that they could maybe go get. Well, now they have a fat asset that they could offer. Do you feel like this front office would... this season may be weird and this team might not be good enough. Like this isn't a team that I'm penciling in. This is a title team, right? I think if they go on a great run, they make the conference finals, but we've seen that from teams before. But do you think that this front office would have the guts if at the trade deadline, they're like the 2 seed and someone's out there and they could just go get them? Like, I don't know. Let's pie in the sky. Let me be crazy. Like LeBron is out there and they could just, I mean, it's a crazy pick, but no, I just got to throw LeBron into every single trade right now. No, but is this a team that would maybe this year, or you think, no, we keep the powder dry. We got to be smart. We say cause you know, we just watched the Thunder do this, right?
Yeah. I think they got to be a little smart right now, just because I don't know, solely based off what happened last season. Yes, I do think Zachary Risacher and Moke, you know, are going to take steps forward, but I don't know if they're like contender steps forward just yet. Right. You have to remember Zach literally turned 20 at the end of the season. Like he spent most of his rookie season at 19. Asa Newell is going to be 20, I believe in September. So this team is so freaking young that I don't know if their trade deadline move to contender pipeline ready yet. I think they need one more season. You know, you've got so many guys on this roster now that have playoff experience that are going to pour into these younger guys, and them making it into the playoffs, you know, having as long a run as possible that they can have is going to be the experience that they're going to need. And then I think next year is more the, you know, make a big move to contender pipeline move for this team. I don't quite think that they're ready yet.
It would be early. I mean, and plus,
I think
like
it's
you said,
early.
The vision, right? Like being patient.
From the perspective, especially with the youth, it's not just a matter of like steps on the court physically, and, you know, and ability. It's also mentality. Right, a maturity, like the capacity to understand, like, yo, we're about to go do something really drastic because we think that you guys can take the step towards a title. That's pressure, right? And so there's still a level of confidence building in those guys to be able to maybe take on a big name, a big star to incorporate at the deadline, and then have the pressure to make something of it. So that's a really good point. I think they're close though. And it's so fun and so unfair that you're this close with that much talent. And what you're waiting on is maturity. Get in the weight room. We know that's going to happen.
And health.
I was going to say, ask me again, like maybe after the in-season tournament, and maybe my mind might be a little different because I was going through all of the emotions when they went on that in-season tournament run just because of how solid they looked. But I think for me, I would want to see, especially Jalen Johnson, have at least as close to a fully healthy season as possible before I can say, let's see the Hawks make that really big move.
Right. Is he a guy? Yeah. We don't even know yet, really.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I had him as the most improved player before he went down.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of people had him in that category. Yeah. One of the things we definitely want to know, though, in terms of what you saw out on the floor for Atlanta, some of the positives, it helps that you had veterans like a Clint Capella on the team that ran that pick and roll really well. But we saw Okongwu come in and be this active version of Clint Capella, this person that could take the ball on his own and be in that dunker spot and elevate, but also be outside and stretch the floor a little bit.
Yeah.
There were so many aspects of this team that you saw their flexibility. What part of the Atlanta Hawks do you think is going to grow the most with this version that comes together? How does Kristaps Porzingis coming in, Luke Kennard with the outside shooting, coming in with the defense and his ability to create? What part of the Atlanta Hawks are you the most excited to see grow? And what's the vision there for you, at least?
Yeah, I feel like the answer is a little bit obvious just because of the pieces that they added. Like the three the three major pieces that they added to the roster can all shoot. So I think the expectation is that 3-point efficiency is going to go up. And mind you, they were shooting 37% as a team last season, which is nothing to really, sniff at or shake your head at. But Kennard's a 44% career shooter. Na was shooting 38%. Porzingis shooting 38%. I think you can expect Jalen Johnson to have a little bit more efficiency from outside. He may not necessarily be a high volume shooter, but because of the spacing, he might get a few more open looks and you'll see that confidence sort of take off. Same with Dyson Daniels. Same with Okongwu, Zachary Risachet, who toward the end of the season was shooting close to, I believe, 39%. So I think that efficiency is just going to continue to go up, and especially because Quin Snyder wants them taking, sometimes they'll say at least like 45 3-point attempts per game. Like
that's why they got Porzingis.
Right. Yeah. Like you look at the box score and they shot like 39. He's like, I wanted them to take 10 more. And you're like, but they weren't making them. But he wants them to take it because as long as they're good shots, that's all that matters to him, even if they don't go in. And so just because of what that can do to open up even the inside game, I think that's gonna be huge for this team. So I think that's sort of where I see them taking, the next step forward. But then obviously defensively, just because of the addition of a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, you get Jalen Johnson back. Okongwu's taken so many steps forward on the defensive side of the ball. And then the expectation is Zach is going to continue to grow as he kind of puts on a little bit more weight. So, I think this is a 3-and-D team.
And they've got that line of flexibility too, right?
Yes.
Like they're going to be able to play big. They're going to be like, I imagine scenario where we see Okongwu and Porzingis at the same time, which is some incredible rim protection and floor spacing. I'm excited about the Hawks. But I was excited last year too. Like I was high on them. Now I'm probably too high on them. It's what I do.
That high-low is going to be lethal.
Last year, I always said I never thought that the Hawks would be good, but I thought that they would be a fun team. And then this year, I'm like, I'm all in. I think they're going to be a fun and a good team. So I'm really excited to see what they're able to string together.
That's going to be a fun inside-out game for sure. Quick question before we wrap up. Short responses from both of you.
Okay.
Dave, what is it going to take for Quin Snyder to win Coach of the Year with the Hawks?
Oh, I think if they're top 3 in the East, I think he gets a lot of buzz. Even with the additions that they've made, they didn't land like this huge fish, right? This isn't like they got Kevin Durant. And so he doesn't have that bias working against him. I think if they're a top 3 seed, maybe just home court advantage team in the East, he gets some buzz. If you look at it, a lot of the people like OKC, you're not getting Coach of the Year. Pacers obviously out of it. Boston out of it. It's going to be a surprise team or a team that we watched get better, and they did better than we expected. So I think top 3 in the East, he's going to be top 3 in Coach of the Year.
I like it. Lauren, What is it going to take for Trae Young to be a solid MVP contender next year?
Ooh.
More than coach of the year, I would say.
More than coach, yeah.
Agreed.
Honestly, for him to be MVP, I feel like the Hawks are going to have to be, like top 2, right? Like
top 2, 55 win team, maybe, right? Like 50 some odd wins.
Yeah.
Is it he's going to be scoring or assisting?
Well, he's going to be 30 and 10, 30 and 12-ish, right?
He's good, but the thing is, those numbers have existed, and that's the thing.
Those numbers exist. I think the big thing is, will he be able to do it efficiently? Because part of the knock against him has always been his efficiency, because he's had to do so much. He might be able to find his teammates, but then it's just like the shots that he was taking just never seemed to really like align with what he should have been doing in the moment. And so I think the big thing is that if he can get his efficiency up without necessarily needing, to get calls at the get to the free throw line, I think that's a difference. I think the whole knock against Trae, is obviously his size. But I think the big thing is it's just going to continue being that turnaround in reputation, which he started last season. I think, it's going to continue growing. So, we're seeing him mature.
I'm loving this. We'll have to see. Yeah. We'll see what happens. Quin Snyder, you've got your task. Trae Young, you've got your task. Atlanta front office, apparently you're doing the right things, according to Lauren Williams. And we appreciate you, Lauren, taking the time to talk to us before you head out to Summer League to join Dave in the sweating in Vegas.
We'll get some dinner.
I hope you guys enjoy the time watching a little bit of ball, watching a little bit of future play out. Guys, go read Lauren over at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and definitely check in with the podcast, because we're going to be talking to people. Lauren, you might have to jump on while the guys are out of Summer League as well.
Just let me know. Just tell me when.
Of course. Thanks for joining us, Lauren. Thanks, Dave, for tapping in. And thank you guys for listening. Make sure you guys go like, subscribe, wherever you're listening. We appreciate you joining. Enjoy the rest of your day.